Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, marhaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos, welcome. My name is Jedley, and this is Reading with Your Kids. We're beaming out to you in the world from the book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. At Reading with Your Kids, our mission is simple but powerful, to bring families together through the shared magic of books and stories. In every episode, we sit down with fascinating folks who are creating books that open hearts and spark imaginations. Want to help us grow this mission? Please tell all of your family and friends. Tell your kids' teacher, even the crossing guard, that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Audible, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, CastBox, YouTube, Player FM. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. This is a really fun episode. First up, Brittany Johnson is here to tell us about her YA title, Deadly Ever After. And later in the show, Leslie Vedder is here to celebrate her new middle grade novel, The Nowhere Beast. Hey, this episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by AspireDrinks.com. Hey, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever wanted a little extra energy, but not the kind that makes your heart race or leaves you crashing an hour later? Well, that's exactly why I want to tell you about Aspire Drinks. You'll find them at AspireDrinks.com. Aspire calls itself a healthy energy drink, and honestly, that description really fits. Instead of loading you up with sugar or extreme caffeine, Aspire delivers a gentle, steady boost with 80 milligrams of natural caffeine from green tea and guarana. That's about half the caffeine of most energy drinks, enough to help you stay focused without the jitters or the crash. It's also zero sugar, 0 calories, and 0 artificial additives, which makes it a great choice for parents, teachers, and anyone trying to make healthier choices while still getting things done. And get this, it actually tastes great, light, crisp, and lightly sparkling, with flavors like sweet cherry, raspberry acai, mango lemonade. That's what I love. No heavy aftertaste and easy on the stomach. Aspire is packed with B and C vitamins, biotin, and ginger. And it's vegan, gluten-free, keto-friendly, really designed for real life. And just for Reading with Your Kids listeners, you can get an exclusive discount of 20% off. That's the highest discount available when you shop at AspireDrinks.com and use our promo code READ. That's READ at AspireDrinks.com. Healthy energy done right. I have a feeling we're going to have a great time because me and my guests, we just were hanging out for like 20 minutes and we had a great time. And so I'm glad you're joining us. She's coming to us from California. She's here to celebrate her YA title. It's a romantasy, I think is the word. Mm-hmm. The name of the book is Deadly Ever After. Please welcome to the show, Brittany Johnson. Hey, Brittany, how are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm good.
Delighted to have you on. You know, Reading with Your Kids, most people hear it and they think, oh, picture books, Reading with Your Kids. And we celebrate lots and lots of picture books. But the one thing that we really encourage families to do here is to continue reading or co-reading with their kids when they become teens and get into middle grade and YA titles. And I think just the way my beautiful wife loves talking about all the romance books that she reads with her friends, I'm guessing that a teen would, and you can tell me if a teen might have fun talking to her mom or maybe her aunt about Deadly Ever After.
I think so. I mean, listen, at my age, I still co-read with my mom, honestly. It's more of like a book club because we're so far.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But so much of Deadly Ever After was really made with community in mind, and especially with matriarchal figures, right? So I do feel that if you're a teen and whether you're talking to a mom, an aunt, a grandma, just any of those figures, like those parental figureheads, even the men or the other parents in their lives, I definitely think there's so much to talk about, connect over, and maybe even introspect a little bit.
Yeah. You know, I'm glad you mentioned grandmothers because we love to celebrate intergenerational friendships here, and of course everybody thinks, oh, the little kids with their grandparents, and that's so cute, and it's really cute. But boy, if you can maintain a close relationship with your grandparents when you're a teen, that's like gold.
It is. It's also, I feel like the teen years are so tough because at that point, it's when your self-identity is really, really starting to form, but also be challenged. And I think art's a huge part of that. But it's, even with me now being half my lifespan out of my teens, I just think back to my grandmother. And my grandmother, she sadly passed in March of 2022, actually, as I was revising this book. It was on submission, we're revising it. But that closeness, that fondness, the conversations that started in our teens as she was looking back and I was doing my best to look forward, that intergenerational connection, I think, is both so pure and so special. And when I feel like a teen, sometimes you just don't realize it in the moment, right? But then when you look back and you're navigating life through a whole new lens, whether it's through your young 20s, your mid 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it may be, that's when all of it trickles back in. And it feels like a cyclical, like fun way to just kind of stay connected.
Yeah. What was one of the funnest memories you have with your grandmother?
Oh, wow. That's actually really tough. My grandma was one of my biggest champions. And she never looked at me as when I told her these grand ideas, and she just was like, okay, we're going to make it happen. You can do it. She thought I could move mountains, and, I believe it too. But I would say some of my standout memories, and this is pretty small, every year for Christmas time, she would take me out of school to go Christmas shopping.
Very cool.
And Christmas is just generally always one of my favorite times of the year. And I do think it's partially because of her. But I would make a list. I would sit in front of the TV, write all the commercials, tell her we have to go to this mall, this mall, this mall. I was very type A detail oriented at a very young age. But it was such a special tradition. And I got to skip school too, that I would say that's up there. She also was a Disney grandma. So almost all my Disney trips up until I was like 15, 16, she was on with me. Wow, it's so much. She was always there, always in the background, always traveling across the country. If I called her and said, "Can you please come from Florida to New Jersey?" she was there.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So Deadly Ever After. I just was introduced to this term romantasy, I think a couple of months ago. Define it for us, please.
I think romantasy is when, yes, it's fantasy, but it's more romance than it is just pure fantasy. Oftentimes in fantasy, we have the romantic subplot or a B plot or even sometimes a C plot. But to me, romantasy is when it is so closely integrated into the plot that there is no removal. It's not this is secondary to the main plot line of, are they going to slay the dragon or do whatever they need to be done. It is the plot and it is integrated into it. I think my favorite romantasy example is Shrek.
Okay.
Because the whole idea of Fiona and love and Shrek and her being together and that creating like the conflict between her and Lord Farquaad, the romance is integral. You cannot separate it out.
Right. Yeah. So I understand the stars of Deadly Ever After are two dead princesses. Tell us about them.
Yes. I remember when I started thinking of the idea of wanting to write a fairy tale, because fairy tales are my life. Every fairy tale has that moment where the princess is in the coma. And I saw a tweet that said, so what happened to the princess when she's in the coma? And I was like, that's a really good question, actually. I've never seen that dissected. And it was, I believe, in November in 2019, I decided to just play around with a rough concept of what this could be. And to me, death is also rebirth. It's a moment to start anew. And I think that's a beautiful part about loss, right? So framing a book about two dead princesses, we get to play into the fairy tale trope of being in that coma, so to speak, of waiting for true love's kiss. But we also get to see this as a chance of a new beginning. And that's everything just blossomed from there.
Now, you said you had this idea and you're playing with it. And so I know if I'm playing have an idea for a musical thing, I can sit there and play. But with the story, it's a little bit more complex. You have to write out things. And how's your process? How's your play process with these ideas?
It's different every single time because the inspiration strikes from a million different things. I would say I've always been very hyper into fairy tales, and I have a very extensive knowledge of fairy tales for that reason. And I think a lot of my process usually starts with a what if, or it starts with, this story is a favorite story of mine. Let's turn it on its head. I have a few stories like that have started that way, but regardless of where the idea is starting, it usually from there stems to me from almost a more, I hate to say marketing standpoint, but I'm a content strategist and a content operations manager in my 9-to-5 life. Uh-huh. So I almost start creating the whole package, the mood, the who is this for, what are the themes I'm looking for. It's so nebulous. I sometimes, if I just don't know where everything is going, I'll just write the first chapter, see what it feels like, and then does this have legs, so to speak, and then I'll just keep it running. But the process changes every single time. For Deadly Ever After, it was one of those moments where I knew the character before the character even knew me. I knew at least Amala in the beginning, and I knew the story started with her. I knew I wanted her to be dead, and I knew that she was in a new world. So that entire first chapter, or now it's the second chapter, but what was the first chapter, I wrote it. I sent it to my mother, and a friend at that point said, do you think this sounds good? And they said, what happens next? I said, I don't know. And it goes from there.
Such a weird sentence that you just said. I knew the main character is going to be Amala, and I wanted her dead.
Sad for her, fun for me.
Well, that is, as a creator, as a writer, you are in charge of this world that you're creating, and you mentioned that it's fun. Talk about why it's so much fun being able to manipulate these characters.
It's so much fun for me, and again, it's fun for different reasons. Every project, right? But I feel like for Amala, the fun was in knowing I am gonna make your life suck so much because I'm gonna fix it and we're gonna make it through, right? Okay. And so for that was the fun of how far can I push her before we pull her back. And for Khadijah, it was actually the other main character, very, very similar, except due to Khadijah's personality type, I had to push her so much more. And when you're working with a character, I feel like that's as stubborn and tenacious as Khadijah. You just keep pushing the limits, and it made me even think of how far am I willing to take her. And in a story that is so soft, so gentle, that is a love letter of sorts, being able to give that tough love, it was just fun getting my hands dirty. Yeah.
So as I understand it, both Amala and Khadijah, they have to find that true love kiss that will bring them back to life. Mm-hmm. How's that happening if they're dead? Are they just kind of their spirits floating around and battling each other?
I mean, they're mouthing off at each other. There's that. But it's all through a journey that they have to go on together. Very early upon the meeting, they're told that they have to reach what's called the Colosseum of the Wilted, a point on a map within 5 days' time, and it's on that journey they have to get true love's kiss. So at this stage, Amala, she just started this book. She just got married in the first chapter, right? And that's not even a spoiler. She just got married. She's like, okay, well, I have a true love. It's not you. Khadijah's like, I don't have anyone to love, but I'm stronger, and you would die without me. So I guess I'm your bodyguard. And from there, they keep it moving. And it's always, I think it's how love so naturally unfolds, especially when you have so many internal and external blocks. When you're forced near someone, there's only so long you can go without really getting to the nitty gritty of who am I with, why are they like this, but also why am I reacting this way? And that is really the whole aspect of how, if, when, you'll have to find out they fall in love.
Tell me, one of the things that I started here when I launched Reading with Your Kids back when you were in grammar school back 8 years ago. I would hear authors say, well, this character really surprised me when they did this or that. And at first it's kind of like, going, dude, you're in charge of this. What do you mean they surprised you? But I get it now. How did Amala surprise you in the book?
I would say Amala didn't surprise me as much as Khadijah did. And for two reasons. One, Khadijah just refused to get with the picture. And it was really hard trying to just get her to agree to the quest, get her to agree with being near this person, right? To even partnering. And there were so many times when I was writing and I was like, okay, this is the chapter where they're finally going to get along a little bit. And then Khadijah would just say, no, I don't want to. I refuse. So honestly, her own stubbornness within this story surprised me. And honestly, both as a reader and a writer, frustrated me sometimes to no end, especially when things are just right in front of her. And then the other thing that really surprised me is where Khadijah's journey goes. Originally, Deadly Ever After was only Amala's story. It was only one point of view. And Khadijah was the voice that kept changing and morphing and finding its legs as every revision pass continued up until the final stages of revisions in the draft of 2024, summer 2024. So every time I touched the page, she just would do something I didn't expect or say something that I wasn't expecting her to go, or break down in a way where I was not going to take her there at that point. Uh-huh. And that was, I think, the fun of allowing her to almost tell me where she was emotionally at all times versus me having to guide her and say, in this chapter, you do this. She's just like, no.
Did you ever have any conversations with your friends or family where you would come out from a writing session and go, that damn,
It's so funny. I think in the final revision, I was talking to my boyfriend he's a novel and script editor, right? So we have a lot of literary conversations. We're both writing all the time. And there was this one day that I sat down at the table and I just said, she's making her life so much harder than it needs to be. She doesn't have to do it this way. But here we are. And it's just going to keep getting worse. And I almost got mad. Because I'm just like, these things are happening because of the choices that you're making. And you have to live with that or die with that, technically. So I've definitely had those moments.
Yeah. So the world that you created for Amala and Khadijah, what's this world like?
Oh, it's lush. It's so lush. I love flowers. They are some of my favorite things ever, and they're my happy place. And I knew that in this world there was going to be a lot of duality, basically between softness and strength, right? So to me, the flower was always going to be the go-to metaphor. Flowers, gardens, everything that is, botanical. And that's what I first started shaping this world. I wanted it to be surrounded by the magic of flowers, of sprouting, of wilting, the thorns, the petals, all of those fun metaphors. But then as the story continued, I realized that wasn't enough. So as I continued to world build and shape out other areas that the girls may go, they consistently reflected the challenges that the girls were facing within themselves. If they were stuck in the mud, then they may have quite literally been trudging through mud. If they were, let's say, drowning in their emotions, well, maybe there's a moment where they're having to trek through water. And a lot of the world building, the garden, and this says it in the book, the garden is a mirror. It can be this beautiful, lush, gorgeous landscape where it smells fragrant and it's peaceful, or it can be your living hell, but it's going to reflect whatever challenges and feelings that you're facing on the inside. And that made it very easy to figure out where to go.
Yeah. Did you, as you're creating this world, this universe, did you have like 1,000 sticky notes up on the wall saying, well, when you go here and that, and when this happens, that happens?
Honestly, no. So much because of it was such a unique revision process over a very long time. And a lot of it was finding its way as it went. There wasn't a lot of sticky noting, a lot of like overall plotting beforehand until I started getting to the final stages. Before that, it was just what felt right in this moment. What are the girls going through? What challenges are they facing together apart? When do I need to separate them, pull them back together? It was a fun experience of world building where I literally just let the world build itself versus having to get exceedingly nitpicky over every single location and where they had to be. All I knew was in 5 days, they got to be at the Coliseum. As long as they get to that Coliseum, we are good.
Awesome. We started this conversation talking about moms and daughters reading this book together, daughters and nieces and aunties, maybe daughters and granddaughters and grandmothers. What kind of conversations? Because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking there's a lot here families could talk about as they're co-reading this book. What kind of conversations do you think families can have?
I think one of the largest conversations is the way that we cut off ourselves from support and from love, and how sometimes it's very easy to allow the love that we have for one another to become our biggest detriment in life and create blocks for us. I think there's a lot of conversations about overcoming tragedy and not letting the tragedy become you. And when you come from families dynamics, that, let's say every family has their issues, every person has their traumas in life. And it takes, I think, a lot of introspection, especially in older generations when therapy and like these conversations weren't as topical, to sometimes realize the effects that it's really had on us. And Deadly Ever After, I sometimes joke it's a mental health romantasy. Only because so much of it is about what happens when you're not able to heal properly or get that love, and how that can sometimes taint love or make the love that much stronger in a way that doesn't serve you.
That's really fascinating. You're right there. I have somebody very special in my life, and that person will tell me, it's when I'm down and I need people. That's when I isolate, and I do it every time. And I know I need to be around people, but it's just, and this person will disappear for a few days or weeks, and when they come back, it's like, are you okay? I am now, but I wasn't. And why didn't you call me? What's wrong?
It's very common. And that even is discussed in Deadly Ever After, because one fun thing was showing all the different ways, just one person, but especially Khadijah and Amala next to one another, how they deal with trauma, loss, mistreatment. There are conversations about even the differences between toxicity and abuse, and like navigating that, and the decisions to sometimes change how you navigate in those situations as you get older and grow. And when you're sequestering yourself away from other people, you stop yourself from being able to do those things. And it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that was a major conversation in the book, especially for Khadijah.
Yeah. This might sound like a weird question, but that's okay. I'm a weird guy. How did creating Deadly Ever After change you?
So, in a lot of ways, I have a new joke where you start life as an Amala and then you become a Khadijah. And I think when I started the story when I was in my mid-20s, during quarantine, actually, spring quarantine, Florida. And I was very, very much like Amala. Still very talkative. That hasn't changed. But I was much better at wearing my emotions on my sleeve. I was much better, I think, at communicating about certain things and really processing out loud or in journals or whatever it may be. And as life happened, as I created the story, a lot of loss happened, just in the world, in the collective world, and in my personal life. And the story ended up becoming, I think, that much deeper as I started really developing my own personal relationship with loss and death, which, again, are major themes in this story. As I was able to dive in and almost commiserate on a certain level with characters in the book when they were going through certain things, it allowed me, I think, introspective moments that allowed me to finally heal. In the final year of this book coming out, I actually lost my best friend. And they passed at the age of 28 years old. very suddenly. And they had been one of my largest champions for this book. They were there from day one helping me. And a lot of the book changed after that. But it was through rewriting a lot of, honestly, Khadijah's story, but rewriting so many different passages and parts that allowed me to almost personally finally let that breath go. Which is kind of funny because here I was sequestering and holding everything in and not really allowing myself to be seen crying, writing a character who's sequestering herself in, and that was not intentional whatsoever. So I think the healing component was the biggest part that changed me, and that's something I could have never predicted.
Yeah. I'm incredibly sorry for your loss. That 28 is way, way, way too young. And I wish nothing but happy memories of you and your friend together. One of the things you mentioned early on is you were talking about, you had all this, it was the story, but you're also thinking about the mood and this, and because you get the content there might be some people out there that are thinking, oh, you should just be writing from your heart and your inspiration. Don't try to market it. It's art. But we know that that's not true, that this is a business. And you want to write a story, but you want to write a story that people are going to want to read again and again and again. And so could you help an aspiring author out there a little bit, help them think a little bit along those lines as they're creating their books?
Yes, of course. This is one of my favorite things because projects that I can't really talk about, I already have marketing plans in my head, and I'm starting early because I enjoy it so much. So I feel like every author knows what it's like to have Pinterest open at the odd hours of the night, figuring out the mood board and how they want to talk about it. But we also have a personal reason for why we're writing this story. And I think so many authors get lost when it comes to trying to figure out the early stages of marketing, because it's good to be so into the story, but there's ways to let the story almost market itself and have that help you write the story in a way that doesn't cheapen it or make it, let's say, just a cash cow moment, right? It's sometimes knowing where, let's say I have a project in blue is like massive in the story for whatever reason. For this story, it was purple. I already knew that if purple is going to be the color that relates to these two girls, and I'm picking it because it's royalty, and I have all these different shades, I can make that work across the entire brand. And this is how I'm now excited to paint this picture that I've written out, but for everybody else who's now going to be diving into the world. Because a book, it doesn't have to just be a 2D experience. It can be that 3D experience. And when I think about the colors that I'm going to use, the videos that I'm going to make, sometimes I think, oh, there's a video I want to make, but that's not what's in the story. But we can put this in, and that would actually make it better. It can be a give and take instead of it just being pulling from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think you mentioned a word, brand. Your book you're building a brand. You're building a brand for your book. You're also building a brand for yourself as an author, which I think a lot of, especially aspiring authors, they're not thinking about that. And it's, as we say here in Boston, it's like wicked important to think about.
I have a very, very close friend who is very proudly from Boston as well, and I'm pretty sure I've heard him say that.
So, am I going to be asking you to reveal a spoiler if I ask you if Amala and Khadijah are going to have more adventures in the future together?
I wouldn't say so. I think what I love about this story is that it does feel like this is their story. This is where they go next. I sometimes joke it's none of my business what they do next, but it kind of feels that way because in a way, we're with them for so many intimate moments, right? And there are decisions that they have to make, and they talk about this in some of the final chapters. Decisions they have to make, places they may or may not end up going, if they even stick together, if they make it out of this alive, who knows? But I do feel that where this story ends is the perfect place, and after being in the garden for half my adult life, I'm really excited to just venture into something brand new with slightly lighter vibes. Because again, these are very intimate topics, you know?
Yeah. I love what you said. We don't know if these dead characters going to make it out alive. It's kind of cool.
Should use that for the marketing.
You could, yes, that would be a great trailer. Tell us where we can go to find out more about Deadly Ever After, and most importantly, find out more about you, because you're a pretty interesting person.
Oh, thank you. You can go to bybrittanyjohnson.com for both, actually. There's a linked out page for all things Deadly Ever After, where you can ultimately go purchase the book, look at reviews, do whatever it is that you feel called to in your heart. As for me, I am also on Substack, Instagram. I'm on almost every social platform you can think of, but this year I'm focusing heavily on building up my Substack and honestly a YouTube channel, which should be launching before the end of January. So by Brittany Johnson across the board.
Wonderful. We've had a really fun time speaking to the author of Deadly Ever After. It is the YA romantasy from our guest, Brittany Johnson. Hey, Brittany, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you for having me. I deeply appreciate it.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is sponsored by Ramble Office. You know, before I tell you about Ramble Office, let me tell you about what travel used to look like for me. When I take the Reading with Your Kids studio on the road, it was like a lot. I had one box for the mixer, another case for microphones, a satchel for my laptop, cables everywhere. And I always felt like I was forgetting something. That's why Ramble Office really clicked with me. Rambo takes everything I used to juggle, tech gear, personal stuff, and puts it into one smart, great-looking unit that's designed to be a mobile office, not just luggage. Everything has a place. Everything stays protected. And when you get to where you're going, you're ready to work. Instead of digging through bags or repacking your life every time you move, Rambo keeps your setup organized and ready to deploy. Travel days stop being chaos and start being productive. It's sleek, modern, built for people whose work doesn't stop just because they're on the move. And if your job follows you, whether that's podcasting, teaching, consulting, or creating, Ramble is worth a look. Go to rambleofficeanywhere.com, all one word, rambleofficeanywhere.com. Use the promo code READ, R-E-A-D, and receive 5% off any product. It's exclusive for Reading with Your Kids listeners. Check it out today, rambleofficeanywhere.com, promo code READ. My friends, get ready for a mysterious conversation. Our guest is coming to us from Colorado. She's here to celebrate The Nowhere Beast. It's her latest middle grade novel. Please welcome to the show, Leslie Vedder. Leslie, how are you?
Oh, so good and so excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on too. Boy, you know, mysteries and kind of creepy mysteries. That I ate that up when I was a middle grade kid.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, even though I was a very easily terrified child, I still loved horror. I feel like that way even now, that somehow, even though I am more scared than anyone else in the room watching a horror movie or reading a book, I still love that feeling.
Yeah. Why do you think kids love that so much?
Oh, especially as a kid, I think there's something really fun about being scared from the safety of your bed. Like instead of scared at night alone, like when you read a book that has a character who's scared, I mean, you get to also usually see that character be brave. And so I feel like when we read horror books, we're all getting a little braver while we read them too.
I like that idea. We're getting braver too.
Yeah. And I mean, that's definitely true of me now. But I have to say, like, when I was young, I think the first book that scared me, like, more than anything else was Scariest Stories to Tell in the Dark. And it had, like, this terrifying art in it, too. And that book definitely lived rent-free in my head for years and years and years. And I think, though, that having those scary stories in your head, does sort of give you that scare in a way where you can handle it at home instead of like, I think I also would have been the type of kid who was very scared outside of my home. And so like just that scariness, gives you that woo shiver. And then you get to have that feeling of being safe afterward too.
I just a couple of hours ago, I was at the gym, and my acupuncturist is there at the gym, and I went over to make an appointment, and she was busy. She was down and she's working, and I didn't want to interrupt her. She didn't hear me come up. And so I'm standing there and I'm like, if I say something, I'm going to terrify her. But if I just keep on standing here, and then she finally looked over and she's like, oh, what are you?
Right. The real life jump scare that you've given someone.
Yeah. So tell us about the Nowhere Beast. This is a sequel to The Labyrinth of Souls. Who made it into the sequel?
Okay, yeah, so this is fun. So, Ix Tatterfall is the main character of these books. And so she's a young girl who's always felt a little bit different, always been a bit of an outcast. And it's because she can see these nightmare creatures. And the nightmare creatures are sort of the monsters that come from this mysterious labyrinth of souls, the place between life and death. And so in the first book, she gets swept into an adventure and ends up at Candlecore Academy, which is a place where all the kids go who can see these nightmare creatures. So kids like her and learn about them. And so in the second book, Ix and her friends, Ollie and Morrigan, are back at Candlecore, but there are ghosts rising from the bowels of the castle, and there is a shadowy Nowhere Beast who is stalking Ix that no one else can see. So, danger around every corner again.
Yeah. I have to ask, Ix, that's a rather unique name. Where did that come from?
Actually, funnily, I really like the name, but it comes from when I was younger, I didn't know how to read Roman numerals. And so, IX is actually a Roman numeral, but I was like, oh, this is the Ix chapter, obviously this is how we read things. And so I just like the sound of it too, Ix, but that's where it originally comes from, the idea.
Okay, cool. Growing up with the name Jed, I was the first Jed that most people had ever met. And even to this day, people have a hard time with only 3 letters. So, Ix. Yeah, I don't know if I would have liked growing up with Ix though.
It does give her a hard time. She does get some nicknames from Ix that she would prefer not to have, but
yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine
yeah.
in middle school, you show up at the lunch table and the kid goes, Ix.
That's totally it. It's the ick,
So this idea for this universe that you've created, did you I'm always fascinated with authors and illustrators' creative process. Did you sit down and think to yourself, I want to create this universe where they have these ghosts and trouble around every corner, or was it something that came to you that you just built on?
I would say that it kind of all came from the idea that there would be this labyrinth of souls. And so the thing about the labyrinth is it's a place that's connected to our feelings. And so the rulers of this mysterious labyrinth are actually personifications of emotions like wrath and greed and terror. And then all of the creatures inside the labyrinth are also connected to our feelings. So an easy one is there's a fright bat. And if it was flying around over your head, you might get an unreasonable chill of fear. Or there's a little creature a little more fun called the weighty sloth. And so if this sloth were to climb up on your back, you would have that feeling of oh, the weight of the world is on my shoulders. And so in the world of the labyrinth, that might actually be a little nightmare sitting on your back and not just a feeling you were having. And so I had just wanted this world that was these are all these big complex feelings that we have, and even the smaller ones, and what are creatures that would do this? And so it also started, chaining from there and getting bigger, okay, who would be the right person to face these creatures, and what might these creatures do, and what fun might you have with them? And so I think it all sort of built from this initial idea of this labyrinth of souls.
Fascinating. I love it. Did you always aspire to kind of write this kind of content?
That's funny because I started, in my first books are actually YA books, so teen books. And then I really loved the books that I read, the middle grade books when I was growing up. I mean, those are the books that turned me into a love of reading, a love of writing. And I wasn't sure I had the chops for that. I was I don't know, maybe I'm just an older writer, but I really wanted to do something that had this like immersive world of like creatures and animals and silliness sometimes and horror other times. And it just felt like I wanted to reach the reader I was when I was, 8, 10, 12 years old. And so I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this middle grade book happen.
Excellent. Excellent. Boy, what's the biggest challenge for you going from YA to middle grade?
Oh, that's such a good one. I mean, I think one big one is that middle grade books are they're a lot shorter, and so like, but you don't want to lose any of the wonderful world building or character. They do it all. They do all the wonderful immersive, story creation, but they do it shorter. And so I definitely had to sort of teach myself to write in a new style, and also to like not take myself so seriously. Definitely. I was like, this is something that you're writing, and if you're not having fun writing it, a kid is definitely not going to have fun reading it. So
I think that might be the hardest thing that any artist can achieve, is not taking themselves too seriously.
I mean, it's a definite danger because, like on the one hand, definitely when I even set out to be a writer, like going back to before I was any good at it, I really thought like writing was very serious business. You probably need a beret. I definitely thought you should look a certain way while doing it, which is, silly because nobody sees that part. And the things I tried to write when I was like, this is serious, it should have gravity, were just not very fun and not very good, honestly, because I wasn't being true to myself, because like, that's not who I am. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of writing is learning to figure out who you are as a person, and that will help you figure out who you are as a writer.
Yeah. So who are you?
Oh boy, that's a fun one. I would say for me, like, books are big giant adventures with like characters dialed up to 11. So madcap romps in adventure worlds.
Now, is that something that you do in real life? Do you find yourself going on lots of adventures and meeting wild, crazy people?
Some of that. I would say, like, I do a lot of adventuring in books, and then in my life, I'm actually a bit of a shy person. And so I have a lot more adventures in my head than I have, like, out there. But that doesn't mean I'm not, like, out hiking or walking in the woods and imagining enchanted forests or finding rocks or going to the beach. I feel like anywhere you go can be an adventure.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because Leslie and I were chatting about the weather and the temperature in Colorado and in Boston and whatnot. And spring, summer, fall, a little bit of winter, I'm out 2 or 3 days a week hiking in the woods. We're very lucky. We live in Boston, but we're surrounded by nature, big wildlife sanctuary and a nature reservation. And there are times when I'm in the woods and thinking, and I'm by myself and I'm on an off trail, that boy, there could be some spooky things going on here. Is that when you're trekking out there? Is that actively going on in your mind?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think getting out into the woods, getting into nature, if that's your thing, can be just like amazing for inspiration, because I feel like you'll just sort of start having that atmosphere around you. And so like if it's like a beautiful spring day and the flowers are coming out, you might start thinking about fairy rings or toadstools or like that. But definitely when those shadows start getting long in the trees and you're hearing those rustling sounds that just always exist in the woods, and you're like, I assume that's a small creature that does me no harm, but you never know. And so like I think our imaginations kind of go wild in that circumstance where there's so much unknown around us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. My beautiful wife and I were in Ireland last year, and we were up early morning to take a carriage ride through the countryside. And of course, the guide was very adept at, talking about the fairies and all the different creatures that lived in the woods, and it was foggy and it was pretty spooky. I could understand how the people would conjure up ideas of fairies and creatures.
I mean, that sounds so fun. Like, that's now on my bucket list of things to do with a carriage ride in Ireland, because like that sounds amazing.
Yeah. So tell me, was Ix inspired by you or someone you know?
I would say that like Ix definitely has some of my feelings. You know, rather than being inspired like by who I was as a kid, though, I think a lot of us feel different, you know, when we're kids for one reason or another. And a lot of us feel like we don't fit in, you know, and so there are a lot of these feelings in Ix that are mine. And definitely something I have struggled with is anxiety. And that is definitely a huge part of this book too. And so there is this idea of Ix and who she can be and like what she can become and like how she can deal with these emotions she has that are definitely rooted in feelings I've had. But then also she gets to be like the character I always wished to see as a kid. Cause like, I mean, if I had a dream right now, I could talk to nightmares and like talk to giant talking cats. That would maybe still be my dream come true right now.
You know, our audience is mainly teachers and parents and other authors. And I'm imagining there might be a parent out there that's listening that has a girl, a boy that's in that middle grade age that is experiencing anxiety and that the parent wants to help. How could reading the Nowhere Beast together and actually both the books, the Labyrinth of Souls and the Nowhere Beast, what kind of conversations do you think parents could have that might help their kids see that they can overcome their anxiety and be the hero that they want to be?
Well, I mean, I love that. I love my dad actually read aloud to me and my sister like every day when we were young. And so I love the whole idea of parents and kids reading the same books, talking about them. And so when it comes to like Ix and these books, a huge part of these books is just about acceptance, like accepting yourself for who you are and learning to like appreciate the things about yourself that you might have thought, you know, were the things that made you different, and like learning to accept other people who are different and like learning to understand like even these nightmare creatures that feel so different and so scary right at first. And so these nightmares are the thing that I think would be the most fun for parents and kids to talk about. And they could even make up their own nightmare creatures, because the whole idea is like these nightmares are feelings that we have. And so whether it's like the feeling of the weight of the world on your shoulders, or like the feeling of irritation that's getting to you, or, you know, some of them, like the seething serpent, is a creature of anger. And the angrier you get, the bigger that serpent gets. And so one of the things you have to do in this book is not just, you don't never trying to defeat or kill these creatures. Instead, it's like, how will you calm the seething serpent down? You know, how will you get the weighty sloth that dislodged from your shoulders? And so funnily for that sloth, one thing they recommend in the book is think of something fun you can do right away, or make a to-do list, because the sloth's so lazy fella and he wants nothing to do with that. So he'll detach himself. And so I think it would be really fun for kids to like make up their own nightmare creature. Like whether it's that hangry feeling you get on the way home from school, like what would the hangry monster look like? Would it be a raccoon or like a giant bear or like a really annoying parrot talking in your ear? And then think about like, how would you calm the hangry monster?
What a great idea. And how much fun would that be, you know, with your kids sitting down, and it would give parents a great chance to be vulnerable and to let their kids know some of the things that they're anxious about and that they're worried about. And I think anytime as parents, when we do that, we're giving our kids a chance to see that we're human, and that's a great way to grow closer with them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's just so important to see that like these emotions are something that we all deal with. And like just that like they're not something that's so scary. They're something we can understand.
Yeah. That's, boy, understanding feelings. That's, never gets easy.
No, I keep waiting, you know, like surely there'll come an age at which I'm really good at this finally.
You know, as we're talking here and talking about nightmares, the nightmare that I had from being a kid, it was waking up and finding myself in like a desert, which is, and just being alone, which is weird because I've spent so much time as an adult alone, traveling around the country, doing performances and whatnot, you know, hours and hours in the car by myself. And I'm completely comfortable with that. But as a kid, the thing that terrified me more than anything would be waking up in the middle of the desert by myself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I think as a kid, like, especially like it's the fears we don't confront, as it were, like those fears that kind of, they have a way of growing when we don't look at them, like mold. If we leave them in the dark, they have a way of getting bigger. I definitely know as a kid, I was also scared of the dark. That was one thing. And, there were things like night lights, there was things like leaving the door open, but there was some part of me that just always worried there was something in the dark. And of course, as an adult now, I kind of love the dark, and, I no longer sleep with the nightlight. And so there are those things that, are those irrational fears that just get into us, and they are somewhere in our heads. I think one of my favorite quotes about horror is that horror is the dark basements of our minds.
So I like that. Yeah. Now, you shared with us that you started writing YA titles, and you took the challenge to do middle grade. Are you thinking at all of taking on the challenge of doing a picture book?
Oh, I mean, that would be so fun. I'm very daunted by a picture book because, like, talk about tiny word count. Like, those again are like a whole book in like a couple hundred words. So that would be amazing. But I do love art. Actually, one of the projects I have coming up this next year is I did the script for a graphic novel. So I will be working with an artist, so not quite a picture book, to bring a story to life. And I'm super excited for that because I feel like artists they bring a whole nother dimension of wonderful to books for kids.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious. One of the things I learned, and I was very surprised learning, was that traditionally, especially with traditional publishers, there's a firewall between a picture book illustrator and the author, and that there's very little, if any, communication between the two. And is it the same with the graphic novel? Do you have much conversation with your artist, or is it just like, yeah, talk to me, and I'll talk to the artist. You stay in your lane?
Right. It actually is a little more like that. Like, most of our communication goes through an editor. I think since there's just like more pages in a graphic novel, there is more of a chance to go back and forth here and there on, what the intention of a scene is. But yeah, I mean, like, you get to see wonderful things like character sketches, like, ideas of like, what's this going to look like? But then you kind of give it over to the artist, and you'll get to see what happens in the end. And I mean, it's a little scary, but it's also a little fun. Like, I get to be a little bit surprised too, which is not often something I get with these projects. So I get to have a surprise waiting for me.
Yeah. Awesome. Tell me, will we see Ix in book 3, 4, 5, or is this it for Ix?
Right now, it's just a duology.
Okay.
So, like, I do feel like I really loved these characters, and revisiting them something down the road would be so fun. But at the moment, it's just the two, and there are no cliffhangers. So nobody will be, stuck hanging forever.
We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the Nowhere Beast and find out more about you, Leslie.
Yeah. So you can find me on my website, which is just leslievedder.com, and it has all the information. You can also follow me on Instagram, where I do post about my books and also my cats. So, there's a extra boost there.
Yep. And Leslie was sharing with me earlier that she thinks she may have a very distant connection to Eddie. So if anybody out there knows Eddie, tell him about Leslie, and maybe we can find out who their common ancestor was.
Right, I'm putting that wish out into the universe.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Nowhere Beast. It's the new middle grade novel from our guest, Leslie Vedder. Hey, Leslie, thanks for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Hey, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. Hey, if this episode and our guest made you smile or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing a link to the show with someone you love. Give them a chance to smile and get them thinking. Also, please leave a 5-star review wherever you find our show. And also, please be sure to subscribe. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on X. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids, and our website is readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Brittany Johnson. Please be sure to check out Deadly Ever After. And Leslie Vedder. Please be sure to check out The Nowhere Beast. We want to thank our sponsors, Remember, when you use our promo code READ, R-E-A-D, READ, you'll get a great discount, and we may earn a small commission. And that really helps us here at the podcast. Also want to thank my team, Chris Doherty, Joanne Lentz, Jackson Saltolero. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better, kinder, more loving place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.